I have seen his face, and heard the thunder of his hose. As swift as the wind he rides, and behind him his khalasar covers the earth. Men without number, with erics shining in their hands like blades of razor grass. Fierce as a storm this prince will be. His enemies will tremble before him, and their wives will weep tears of blood and rend their flesh in grief. The bells in his hair will sing his coming, and the milkmen in the stone tents will fear his name. The prince is riding, and he shall be the stallion who mounts the world. Hey guys, today I want to revisit my theory on the Stallion Who Mounts the World prophecy. The Stallion Who Mounts the World is a prophecy that involves a cow who unites the Dothraki into a single khalasar and conquers the entire world. The stallion is believed to be the son of Khal Drogo and his Khaleesi, Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen. But Rhaego died, leaving entirely too many fans under the belief that the prophecy was subverted. This is clearly not the case, because the prophecy came true. There is a cow that has united the Dothraki into a single khalasar, and is in the process of conquering the entire world. How can you argue that a prophecy was subverted, if it came to pass? When Prince Rhaegar died on the Trident, Cersei Lannister believed that the Maggie the Frog prophecy of her marrying the king was wrong or subverted. But Cersei did marry the king, King Robert, not King Rhaegar. When Stannis perishes in the show, Melisandre is driven into a crisis of faith, because her visions of him defeating the Boltons and uniting the Seven Kingdoms against the White Walkers were clearly false. Weren't they? No. The Boltons were defeated, and the same king who defeated them is likely to unite most if not all Westeros against the true enemy. That prophesied king was not Stannis, however, it was Jon Snow. And just as Maggie the Frog's prophecy was never about Rhaegar, or Melisandre's prophecy was never about Stannis, the Stallion Who Mounts the World prophecy was never about Rhaego, but another child Daenerys brought to the womb of the world. To a child born in the ashes of Khal Drogo, and nursed at Dany's breast. The Stallion Who Mounts the World is Drogon. If you didn't watch my original video, this might be a little confusing. If Daenerys is the cow who unites the Dothraki, then how can Drogon be the Stallion Who Mounts the World? The prophecies surrounding the famed stallion seem somewhat literal. The very name Stallion Who Mounts the World is a description of a horse or riding creature that is above the world, perhaps flying through the air. Another character in this prophecy, the Khal of Cows, is a description of a person who rules over all Dothraki, a Lord of Lords or a King of Kings. We're misled early on in the series to believe that the Khal of Cows and the Stallion Who Mounts the World are the same person. This is probably a case of unreliable narrator and an honest mistake on the part of Ser Jorah Mormont, a non-Dothraki telling us the Dothraki prophecy. People probably didn't think twice about this because of other prophecies that seem to be related and refer to the same person, such as Azor Ahai and the Prince That Was Promised. But Azor Ahai and the Prince That Was Promised are clearly prophecies from two different languages. Even if they refer to the same person, those two different names come from the fact that they come from two different cultures, two different languages. The Khal of Cows and the Stallion Who Mounts the World are from a single Dothraki prophecy, from a single Dothraki language. It doesn't make sense for that one character to have two separate names in that instance. Dothraki means rider, and it would make sense for the famed cow that would unite the whole world to have a famed mount. There's a scene in the show that all but confirms this to be the case. In the show, Daenerys unites the Dothraki after killing the other cows, and walking away from their burning corpses unburnt. There is another scene in the next episode that many people recognize to be gratuitous, where Daenerys names all the Dothraki her blood riders. This scene does not have to be here, as Daenerys has already united the Dothraki behind her. But this scene hints at what will happen in the books. Daenerys isn't fireproof in the books, so it goes without saying that the first scene isn't going to happen in the Winds of Winter. So how will Daenerys unite the Dothraki and become the Khaleesi of cows? With her stallion, Drogon. When Daenerys names all the Dothraki her Blood Riders, she does so on the back of Drogon, who is standing on a rock formation as tall as the mountains behind him. He is the Stallion of the Cowl of Cowls, and he's literally mounting the world in that scene. This isn't the only gratuitous scene in Season 6 that has significance in the books. Kinvara's jab at Varys that he has nothing to fear from her if he is Daenerys' true friend is a nod to the Blackfire theory. Varys' loyalty to Daenerys was never a real question in the show. People questioned it, but all the evidence pointed to Varys being loyal to Daenerys. Plus, there was no one else to back, like in the books. Anyway, in the House of the Undying, Daenerys sees a vision of the Dosh Khaleen bowing to her. Beneath the Mother of Mountains, a line of naked crones crept from a great lake, and knelt shivering before her, their grey heads bowed. This is how I knew Daenerys was the Cowl of Cowls, destined to unite the Dothraki into a single Khalasar. When the Dosh Khaleen first tell Daenerys that she will give birth to the stallion who mounts the world, the old crone pauses briefly, looks at Dany and trembles. But why fear Daenerys? Perhaps because she's seen what she gives birth to. Perhaps because she's seen what Dany will do. But let's get to the heart of why so many fans got the Stallion who mounts the world prophecy wrong. There is another prophecy in the House of the Undying, and the Daughter of Death triplet, that appears to show Rhaego conquering a city. A tall lord with copper skin and silver gold hair stood beneath the banner of a fiery stallion, a burning city behind him. Many of the visions in the House of the Undying have symbolic elements. The blue flower growing from a chink in the wall of ice and filling the air with sweetness is one example. But these three in the Daughter of Death triplet are not symbolic. We see Viserys and his golden crown. Characters within the series were there when King Robert slammed his warhammer into Rhaegar's chest and ended his life. The vision of Rhaego is something we haven't seen, and is evidence that the prophecy has been subverted as Rhaego was destined to live and be the stallion who mounts the world. That's the common misinterpretation of this vision. This interpretation is incorrect, because readers have seen Rhaego before. Before Daenerys is told Rhaego is dead, she has a fever dream. The chapter begins, "Wings shadowed her fever dreams. You don't want to wake the dragon, do you?" The dream goes on to show many curious sights. Drogo and Daenerys making love under a starry daylit sky. Then Drogo disappearing under fire and wings, and ending with her brothers, "Don't want to wake the dragon, do you?" This foreshadows Drogo's blood sacrifice in the rebirth of the dragons. In the dream, Ser Jorah goes on about how Rhaegar was the last dragon, and again ending in Viserys' "Don't want to wake the dragon, do you?" Viserys then screams, "I am the dragon and I will be crowned." Before receiving his golden crown, Daenerys then sees Rhaego. She could feel the heat inside her, a terrible burning in her womb. Her son was tall and proud, with Drogo's copper skin, her own silver gold hair, violet eyes shaped like almonds. And he smiled for her, and began to lift his hand toward hers. But when he opened his mouth, the fire poured out. She saw his heart burning through his chest, and in an instant he was gone, consumed like a moth by a candle, turned to ash. She wept for her child, the promise of a sweet mouth on her breast, but her tears turned to steam as they touched her skin. Viserys' line shortens to, "Want to wake the dragon." It's important to notice that Rhaego in this dream, the one recalled later in the House of the Undying, is also sacrificed to fire just as Drogo was. Dany's dream goes on to show her flying and seeing Rhaegar, and then becoming her brother, becoming the last dragon. And she awakens to the taste of ashes in her mouth, to the news that her son is dead and Drogo is a vegetable, and comes up with the crazy idea of burning Drogo's body with her dragon eggs. The House of the Undying shows her this dream, not what could have been. You can try to argue that the dream is also a vision of what could have been, but the dream clearly ties Rhaego's fate to death and the birth of dragons. When Mirri Maz Duur describes Rhaego, she calls him monstrous, twisted. "I drew him forth myself. He was scaled like a lizard, blind, with the stub of a tail, and small leather wings like the wings of a bat. When I touched him, the flesh sloughed off the bone, and inside he was full of grave worms, and the stink of corruption. He had been dead for years. Rhaego is described as a dragon. Daenerys literally gave birth to a dragon, which is not uncommon among the Targaryens, leading some fans to suspect that the blood of the dragon is quite literal. But from this we know the stallion who mounts the world is meant to be a dragon. But the last line Miri says, "He had been dead for years," is something we have to consider in the context of what we know now from the show. Game of Thrones shows us that A Song of Ice and Fire is in a stable time loop. The timeline accounts for people meddling with the timeline, rendering time effectively immutable, even when the past is significantly affected. In order to get to the present, where Hodor is sacrificed to save Bran, Bran had to go into the past and cripple Hodor mentally by linking his mind to the moment of his death. The past is already written, the ink is dry, but so is the future. If you didn't quite follow what I said, it's okay. Just know that this stable time loop is what makes prophecy possible, since people can see the events of the past, present, and future, and any actions they take reinforce the timeline rather than change it. People can prophesy the future, but a consequence of a stable timeline is that these prophecies are always accurate. Rhaego was never meant to be alive, just as his namesake was never meant to be king. His fate was always tied to the birth of dragons, as he himself was a half-dragon stillborn, and as Daenerys' fever dream alludes. This is significant, as many point to the Stallion who mounts the world prophecy as an example of prophecy being subverted, when this is not the case. There are no instances of prophecy being subverted in this series. Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen is the Cowl of Cowls, and her Stallion who mounts the world is Drogon. She has united the Dothraki into a single khalasar, and now sails to conquer the rest of the world. Drogon rides as swift as the wind, and the milkmen in their stone tents will soon fear his name. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share. Check out my other videos. I'll be back with more videos soon.